You look at what's happening last night in Sweden.
Ah yes, Sweden, a socialist utopia, a bucolic wonderland of far leftist politics and policies. It is a muscular feminist government that preaches tolerance and inclusion for all races and religions. Michael Nikolaj Skramo is an ethnic Swede who converted to Islam. He was also Swedish television's expert on Islamophobia.
Du är muslim?
Ja. Vet du, den här skräcken som finns i Schweiz mot minareter.
This fear is based on ignorance of Islam. Well, Michael has apparently moved on to bigger and better things, because this former expert on Islamophobia, who took part in a number of tax-funded Muslim organizations, decided he was driven to join ISIS by all of the Islamophobia this poor man experienced. He's appeared in a number of ISIS propaganda videos, calling on Muslim Swedes to join him in fighting for Allah. My brothers, Hijra and Jihad are so simple, it only costs a few thousand kroner. Well, it certainly was very easy for Michael, because according to Swedish media, he received around $600 a month in child benefits while he was still fighting for ISIS while living in Syria. In a decision from the tax that we have read and sent out to Michael Skramo's last registered address in Gothenburg, more than a year after he left the country, can be read, social insurance has stopped the payment of child allowances and housing allowances for your children. Wow, how tolerant, how progressive and forward-thinking. Sweden is a country where you can be involved in tax-funded Muslim organizations, be invited onto national television to talk about how racist and terrible Europe is, and how Islamophobia is rampant, and how it's all because of a misunderstanding of Islam, and how Islam is not violent. And then you can join ISIS and fight with a bloody jihadist group committing crimes against humanity and genocide, and Sweden will give you money for child support for an entire year while you're away from Sweden. Former Swedish Prime Minister, Sweden belongs to the immigrants, not the Swedes. Wow, it's so good to see Swedes tackling the big issues, the life-changing issues that really affect all of us, like mansplaining. Have you ever had to deal with some disgusting man trying to tell you that you're wrong about something at work? Do you hate it when men think that they're better than you just because they work harder, are better educated, and make more money? Well, good news, if you live in Sweden, you can call the brand new mansplaining hotline. Unionen, Sweden's largest union, is encouraging members to call up when male colleagues give them unsolicited lectures on things they already understand. It will be open from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day for a week as part of a campaign to highlight and stamp out the insidious and damaging practice. Sweden is such a feminist country, so feminist that the police have responded to the well-documented migrant rape epidemic by telling Swedish women not to go out at night alone, otherwise you will be raped.
Som vi ser det just nu så rekommenderar vi framförallt kvinnor som rör sig ute sent på nätterna att helst inte göra det utan ordna skjuts eller att man är fler människor som går i grupp.
You may wonder about the mentality of someone who would go to a country, ask for asylum, get money from the government as a charity of their people, and then rape their women, but the good news is that you don't have to wait for long. Sometimes, between raping Swedish women and applying for government money, these men of great faith will just scream it at the top of their lungs. Allah Akbar! Subhanallah! Just consider this story of a man molesting 4 women in a town called Vimmerby. It starts with a guy arrived at the restaurant and pushed up their disgusting genitals to my butt. He went on to expose himself and try to stalk a number of women, but when he was confronted by a large group of locals, he started screaming about how much he hates Sweden and how he's only here to fuck Swedish girls and spend their money. These poor Swedish women being sacrificed by their feminist government on the altar of multiculturalism. But it isn't just older women who are being harassed and raped by migrants. Parents in an elementary school in Malmö, Sweden are desperately fleeing that school because of the violence and sexual assault happening. One dad at this school who wished to remain anonymous talks about her daughter being beaten at the school for years. It happens in front of the teachers and nobody puts a stop to it. Boys will threaten that they will rape her and tell her that their fathers will rape her and call her a whore. And the funniest part about it, the reason they do this is because they aren't sufficiently Muslim. That's right, this is a case of Muslim on Muslim rape because those Muslims are not Muslim enough. Multiculturalism. This isn't an isolated incident. This is a story from a different school about a girl that was harassed and sexually assaulted by a number of boys in the school who pulled down her pants and humped her in front of everyone. On one occasion, they assaulted the girl in the schoolyard, and this was reported to the police, but the complaint was closed because the boys were not criminally responsible. She was called a whore and a pussy, and she was assaulted on the bus so badly that the company offered to take her directly from school to home alone, but that didn't help at all because a group of the boys followed her home and surrounded her outside and threatened to pick her, according to her mother. The reason why all of this was done, she was blonde and cute. The girl was forced to leave the schools and the perpetrators remained. Maybe if you just stay in your home and watch TV and refuse to go to school, you'll be safe from all of this terribleness happening in Sweden. But you better stay off Facebook because migrant men are now starting to rape Swedish women and broadcast it live on Facebook. According to some government documents, 80% of Swedish police have considered quitting over the migrant danger, and this may be what prompted one officer to rage against the Swedish system over Facebook. He lists out his work week and all of the crimes he's had to deal with, and then lists out the names of the perpetrators. Ali Muhammad, Muhammad Ali, again. Christopher, wait, is that true? Yes, a Swedish name snuck in on the edges of a drug crime. Muhammad Ali, again and again. For speaking up, he was referred several times to be prosecuted for some brand of hate speech. And for speaking the truth, he was called a right-wing racist. That's right, the truth is now racism in Sweden. He followed up in a post, if you can't discuss the problem of crime among immigrants without somebody attributing it to racist propaganda, we are in deep trouble. The problem is that nobody wants to talk about this. The police had an active investigation into whether this Facebook post constituted a crime, but thankfully they decided to drop all charges. When Donald Trump held a rally and mentioned the phrase last night in Sweden, he was roundly ridiculed by all corners of the mainstream media. Sweden's most popular newspaper even sent one of their journalists to appear on Fox News and lie about Sweden.
We're at a party of educated people and said, you know, immigrants are committing a lot of crime, so they're much more likely to commit crime than a Swedish-born person, which is true, by the way. How would that go over? Would people say that's true, or what are the statistics, or would they say, how dare you say that?
Actually, one of the crimes that has been decreased the most during last year, that was rape.
But suddenly, like fucking magic, 2 days later, a riot broke out in a predominantly immigrant neighborhood in Stockholm, Sweden. This is not footage of the riot in Stockholm. This is footage of a migrant riot that happened in Paris, France. This is also not footage of the riot that happened in the immigrant suburb of Stockholm, Sweden. This is another riot that happened in Paris, France. This is also not footage of the riot that happened in Stockholm, Sweden. It is another clip of an immigrant riot in Paris, France. This is footage of a migrant riot that broke out in a German migrant center. This is a migrant riot that broke out on a small island in Greece.
Not them. We have to live like we used before. I want to go to work, I can't. My children want to go to school. They can't. We have to live our life. They took it for us.
This is a migrant riot that broke out in Bulgaria. This is more footage of a migrant riot that broke out in Greece. This is footage of a migrant riot that broke out in an immigration center in Italy. This is footage of a migrant riot that broke out in Denmark. Now this is finally footage of the migrant riot that broke out in Stockholm, Sweden. But this is actually footage that occurred in 2013. And completely unsurprisingly, the Swedish government's expert on anti-terrorism has found a way to blame white people for the rise in migrant and Islamist violence in Sweden. And some people in the media, including the Young Turks, have desperately tried to blame this riot that broke out in Stockholm, Sweden on Donald Trump's comments about Sweden. Don't criticize those peaceful Muslims, or else they might become violent. It goes without saying that Donald Trump's statements about Sweden are entirely correct. Donald Trump's one mistake was saying last night in Sweden instead of saying all around the world wherever Islam is sufficiently present.